I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to get everything right. I'm doing this all completely from scratch. But I want to talk about what I do to make good CSS as quickly and with as little code as possible, and good layouts. Some of the tools that I use, I like to keep open a copy of the page I'm working on in Firefox, IE7 and IE6 concurrently. And then, as you can see, I use exhaustive use of spaces. And I keep my CSS file and my index file, or my HTML file, going together. So let's just start very basic. Like, give ourselves.
Do you preview from text mail all the time?
What's that?
Do you preview all the way from a text mail all the time? Or
What do you mean?
do you like save it and then refresh it in the browser?
Yes, that is what I do. And then sometimes I will put it on the server so that I can go to a different machine and look at it if I don't have a particular browser installed.
Okay.
So link rel equals style sheet style.css Alright, so I set up a very basic HTML page. Alright, so now let's look at what we're actually breaking apart. This is the mockup from the Claiming Creativity site. And if we expand it, actually we'll zoom in here. And if we look, actually I'll start with a more general view. So what I see here is I see one container that floats in the middle with a drop shadow over here and over here. I see a header. I see a main content area that's got two columns, and two columns with a header at the top, this double line header, and then a footer at the bottom that fortunately does not go beyond the container.
That's kind of nice and good for background.
It is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a I'm going to write the containers into the HTML first, and then give them some styles so that I can visually see what's happening on the page.
So you're also doing logical. You're setting up logical blocks, essentially.
Yeah. I'll show you. Let's begin. So, okay. So in the body, I have a container div. So div id equals container. And then inside that div, I have a header. Then I have div id equals content, the main content, so I'll call it main content. And then I have a footer. And there will be subdivs inside this and sub-elements inside this, but just to get a running start, I do.
From like largest container to.
Well, like I know there's a container for everything, and inside that container that centers it, and then I have a header, my main content, and my footer. All right, so now let's go to the style sheet, and we'll just do some basic things. First thing, we do what's called a clear all, where we set the margin of and padding of everything to 0 pixels, so that not the user agent. It just some browsers will give you some default settings here. So okay, so then let's do something. So that we know the container. I did some sleuthing around this morning. I know that it is 920 pixels wide. And I want to center it, so the div must be. No. If we go to back to the design, you see how there's a little space here on the left and here on the right. Okay. The container is the element that's going to keep everything in the center. So since the header, this header element, this main content area, and the footer all fall within the container, it's just a wrapper to center that.
All those elements are 9/25 long.
Right, but since we set the width of the container, we can set everything else relative to that going forward. So now to center it, we do margin right auto and margin left auto, and we do know that we want it to be full height, so we do height 100%. Now here's something that I do as I'm developing that sort of helps me visualize where everything is. I set a 1 pixel border of different color for each main div so that I can visually see where stuff is laid out. So now let's see, we'll look at the header. The width is going to be for the main stuff I use IDs.
Because they're not reused.
They're just one.
Mhm.
On page one.
Yeah. And in CSS, you know that the pound sign means ID, the dot means class. So,
I mean, you can't use a class just once.
you can, but
You could put that.
classes are meant to be reusable. Solid green.
But I mean, as far as the way that the page renders it or anything is no different. It's just how it's defined in CSS.
Right. Okay. So here's my HTML. Here's my CSS. Let's see how it renders in Firefox. All right. So everything is pushed up to the top because there's no height involved.
Did you use chromatic rainbow border style?
No, I did not.
Wow.
All right. So now we need to put some content into these containers. So let's crop this header out and use it. No, we didn't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Here.
You know what I did that was really easy for this is turn on guides. Just drop guides in and have them snap to the edge of things.
Oh, there we go.
And then it's really easy to
View snap to guides. All right, there we go. But it looks like I'm missing. Oh, I guess
He doesn't have his
there's no guide there.
Yeah.
The bottom doesn't.
There we go. All right. So from Tom's idea, turn on guides. Still.
That guide, you need to move the guide.
Yeah, the guide is
itself.
in the wrong place.
Yeah.
It's Stefan. We're gonna write a little email to Stefan.
No, the blue line is the guide.
I know, but I'm trying to. There we go. Okay. Close enough. So we do that. It will think for a while.
This document is 80 megs.
Yes.
You should, you know what I do is I just flatten it and then do that and then undo because this, if you're working with such a huge document, this is slow everything down.
Is this at like 300 DPI for some reason?
I don't know. I didn't look at the. It's big. Let's just say.
Yeah, if you flatten it, it's going to make the size less small, then you can just undo it.
Okay.
That's a good
That,
tip.
whoa.
Maybe we'll wait until it finishes. There's something weird about this.
Okay.
Remake. Okay, it's a little easier to have to do that part out.
That took a lot less time. Thank you, Tom. All right.
No, yeah, now you can
Save for web.
undo, flatten,
And let's make this a ping 24. See if we get any file savings out of this. No, we do not. JPEG.
A PNG is lossless.
PNG isn't necessarily lossless. It's
It's usually lossless. What do you mean?
Huh?
A PNG?
PNG.
Yeah.
No, you can do lossy PNGs.
Well, but that defeats the purpose of using it. But
All right,
it
so
also
that-
doesn't have as much support for browsers.
Look, I usually do mine maximum.
Really? But then it takes forever to download.
Well, it's still not that big of an image.
200K?
It's a big image.
That's huge.
Maybe I should reduce some of my headers.
All right, so let's zoom out. All right.
I like.
For demonstration's sake, we're gonna do this.
Yeah, after that, we can deal with after
It's okay. I think it's a lot of it is just that the image is so the image is so intricate that you like have no ability to.
to really get savings off of our.
Yes. So. Alright, so we'll go back to here, into here, and our header simply has CSS equals save that.
And you always make sure you put alt, like tags in for the alt.
I try to. Alright, so there's that. Now let's deal with the footer. Now the footer is going to stick to the bottom of the page. So we want the width to be 100, but let's see how big actually the footer itself, how tall the footer itself sits. Go back. Oh, there we go. So it's 164. So we'll go here and we'll say height 164. Now the position is absolute because we want it to always be 0 pixels from the bottom. And then
And that's how you're sticking it there?
yep. And now we have a color and a border here, so let's grab those. So let's see. The color. Come on. No idea. Because I'm running about 8 bajillion other things on here. Over here. And let's see if we want the background color. Alright, and then we want border top 1 pixel solid, and then maybe 2. Let's see. Alright, got that. Let's see how this works. Alright, so problematic because it is set to 100, because it's absolute position. 100% of the width means 100% of the body element. So what we'll do is, since we want the footer and the container both to have the same width, we'll define it at the same time. Back over here, refresh it, and then go. Alright, so in cleaning up, let's take the header, the border off the header, and the container. Let's look at the container. Okay, so the container itself has a white background, it looks like. Make sure it's not, yep, white background. But the body has this gradient image that gradients out to Yeah, so we'll get to that. So this shade of gray right here. So this will be the body background color. And then the container background color is white. Let's take the, oops, I missed the most important part of everything. So this is okay. So if we reload this, we'll see. All right, so we've got our gray border. You can't see it up there, but you can see it on my machine. You've got the gray border here. You've got the white here, and the footer here. So let's remove the border from the container because we can see that that works okay. And I like to check early and check often in other browsers. So see how it looks in IE6. And it should... No, it's being smart. So see, for example, here in IE6, it's working correctly, but the container margins aren't working correctly. Let's see how IE7 takes it. Oh, IE7 has the same problem. So how do we fix that? Well, maybe we can do a text align center in the body. But then that messes the footer up. It moves the footer way over. See how that works in 6. Same deal. Alright, so that's not going to work. What can we do? Body container, footer container. Let's try adding the margins to the footer as well as the container to see if that is causing the problem. No, it is not, but it did fix the...
So the issue here is that it's not centering.
The container is not centering. But it is here. So let's go to...
The Firefox that we're putting in the IE7.
7.6 seems to have the same problem.
So just led to the body selector, then usual. Okay, so...
Well, you did that. That's the nice
But I was adding it to... Was I adding it to the body, or did I add it to...
No, you did the container.
No, you had it in body.
Are you sure?
Yeah. What else did you do?
Yeah.
Because it said do something else too.
Apply text align left on the container to counter the center align for the body.
That one's sort of counterintuitive, but sure.
Aha! So the reason I do this to start with is because this way you don't end up where Tom is at. Struggling. So it works there too.
Text align center and then text aligns left on the container.
Alright. So now, okay, so we've got the basic structure of it complete. So now let's look at the internals and...
Ask a question so I know if I take them along with you.
Sure.
So you centered the container, or you left aligned the container up against the mark.
The...
I'm sorry, you left aligned the container up against the left-hand margin.
the margin of the page.
Like the gray border?
the gray border is actually the page background.
Okay.
So if you look at, I'm not exactly sure what your question is, but I'll try to answer it. So this gray area over here,
Yeah.
actually I'm going to darken that up so you can see it on the
Maybe we should do it. Can we adjust it on here?
I'll just do this. So now you can see that it's darker here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this, and I'll add the borders back in.
So the white area square is different page.
Okay, so this red object, that's the container. So the container sits within the body element. Go back to the text, the HTML. So the container sits directly inside the body element. And in Firefox and most reasonable browsers, by setting the margins, the margin in CSS is the space from the outside of an element to the next, its adjoining element.
Okay.
So in this case, we're setting the margin, the left and right margins for that container div to automatically fill. So it takes the space, divides it by 2, and essentially centers it. So when you're looking at it, this is the background, and this margin here is set automatically. This margin here is set automatically. Does that answer your question? Okay. But since
The
IE
left, what does that technically do?
I don't know.
Just work.
It just works. And a lot of CSS is like figuring out, Googling what trick you need to fix certain browsers and then fixing that. One thing I didn't mention, and I'll demonstrate it here, is I didn't take into account that the footer, remember how I absolutely positioned it against the bottom? Well, now we have an issue because the content in the div immediately preceding it, in the main content, oh come on, there we go, is will float underneath it. Come on. I'll demonstrate. With some lorem ipsum text. Okay. So if I save this, now if I go back here and I refresh, you'll see that the content will slip underneath that div. If underneath the footer. So what I need to do is I need to add margin to the main content div, which I haven't set up here yet.
So we have that. We have this problem.
So that it says, okay, actually no, we add padding to it because the main.
You want a border inside of the or just between the content.
The edge of the element, right. So now if we go here, oh, that's interesting.
Why did you choose here CC4?
Because that's the height of the footer.
Oh, gotcha.
But, oh, here we go. Huh. Not exactly sure why that's happening.
You have to put min height thing.
Min height, not so much. But why is? Huh. This is very interesting. Now the footer won't stick to the bottom, no matter how big the page is. Footers, man. Alright, so let's set container as height 100%, main content at height.
We put a margin on the bottom of the container on mine. So that's the
Okay.
but my container might have been.
What was the position?
margin set for the container?
No, I didn't. Let's see if that works. There we go. But now that footer,
Wait,
Where'd that go? Oh,
yeah,
it's in the
the
middle.
footer is in the middle now.
Tom loves it.
I
He's an
wonder-
expert with the whole footer metal
Position,
PG
absolute.
class. You got rid of it last time. What did you do?
I got it. Yeah, it's working. Footer, we had
Here we go.
position absolute bottom 0.
All right, so I got the footer down to the bottom.
Okay. How do you do it?
I gave it a relative position
Oh, it says absolute.
rather than absolute, so it's relative to the relative to its parent container.
But it's not actually going when you want it to be at the bottom of the browser window.
Right, but see, here's remember I set that margin for the container element. Well, now the container element has this as a margin. So if I go in here and I remove the margin for that, there we go. So, and now we have this very large,
What's that about?
I wonder if that's in the padding bottom that we set.
No.
164.
Here we go.
But that's still.
So, what is that? Does the,
Is there a margin for the footer on the top? Board?
Still looks a little nice.
let's set some padding for the container and give it or not the container, sorry, the main content to measure it. That's what? 18, so I'll say 20 pixels. And we'll give this a border so we can see where the where that extra space is coming from. Again, drop that and pop this. Alright, so we got a little padding here. Okay, so the container actually does go all that way. Is there a height set? Okay, so we don't want to set a height to the container. Or the main content, you're right. There we go. And so now if we remove some of that content, let's make sure that the footer stays at the bottom, but we still have that space in the container. And I'm going to remove a little bit more because this is a very small resolution screen. See, okay, so now there's a issue. The footer isn't staying the whole way down, even though we set the minimum height of container to 100%. Well, just real quick, check it in here. Same issue. Same issue.
Don't you want the minimum height of the content to be 100% too?
No, because remember when you say min height 100%, it's talking about 100% of the viewport.
Right.
But if the viewport is, I mean, if the content here, if this thing right here is 100%, that means it's going to be as tall as from here to here. So if I refresh this, oh, I gotta save it first. I guess I did save it. What the heck? Huh. The idea is that you don't want the height of anything set. If you want the height of something set to 100%. See now this white is the size of the viewport.
Oh.
So, but the funny thing is if we set min height, it doesn't do that. Interesting. All right. Well, I'm gonna deal with this issue separately. I want to move on and talk about these two content. Yeah, these two content walls. Yeah.
Are you gonna make a div for the nav then?
Am I going to make a div for the nav?
Nav on the right hand side.
I'll just make two columns here. But notice like there's this this that goes all the way across here. This two lines. So let's make one div that's this, and well, the thing is that the border looks like it needs to be styled a little more. So what we'll do is we'll make essentially two divs. One div that is just the words, and then one div that has a background image of this. And we'll assign that as a class so that we can put it at the bottom of a couple places. So make a new, save this. Save for web.
So you just you cut out a little more and then you're going to repeat it.
Yep. And since it's really long, we can do this. Save it as web.bg.good. Alright.
Did you paste it in there now?
Did I paste it in here?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I can't.
Alright. So, in the index, main content, create a div called div. No, this will be an ID, because we'll only use it once. And then div class equals bottom border. Alright, so in here, and just for argument's sake, we'll say that the font size is 1.5 em, font weight is bold. Okay, now we want to we want to create that border class, so we'll do div class equals border bottom. The first thing we have to do is specify the background.
You don't have to type div.
No, you don't have to, but it's going to be a div every time I use it. So
it's a little more explicit, and then you know what you're referring to. Because you could just put dot or bottom. Right? You're just being explicit about it.
Right. And then repeat X. So this is only going to repeat. Yeah. We know that the image itself is 7 pixels high, so we'll just set the width or the height to 7 pixels. And we'll set the width to 100% so that it will fill whatever div you put it in. But let's also set the clear on it to both so that new elements will break to the next line.
Okay.
We'll see how that works.
What does font size make it in?
Tom?
The browser default usually is 16 pixels, that's the size. So that would be 1.5 times the default size of every browser set.
Of an actual app, it refers to whatever that character generally is and whatever the size is. So it's proportional to that you actually use that.
Yeah.
Or you can use it against yourself, like content. I suggest
It makes it really flexible, so however resolution they may have set or how they may change the font size, it expands in relation to the stuff.
So it doesn't go crazy. It's useful for people who are We're learning.
All right.
We're all
So all right, so we've got our title and our border. Now what we want to do is we want to break the content underneath the border into two.
Wasn't it in a different color? That
What?
title?
Yeah, I'm just doing the major positioning elements for this. So now we want two columns underneath. So div class equals main content, right? And div class equals main.
You already have a main. Oh.
Alright. So we'll put this.
So your index tab is all of the structures on the page. The style
Is the style sheet.
yeah, okay.
Okay. So
You're totally, that's totally correct.
alright, so put some content there, and let's put some in the main content right as well. Alright, so in the style sheet we want, let's see. Div class main content, right, so the things we want to add to the right column is we need to first of all set the width, so that is 260, and we want it to float to the right, and let's give it a left margin of, and how much space do we have here? Give it a left margin of about 60 pixels.
Can you explain the difference between
A
a line and float?
line and float.
A line is just for like images or text or elements like that, and float is for like a block element.
A float actually takes the element out of the flow, and I don't know the best way to describe it. Okay, so if you float something right, you can still put content to the left of it. It leaves any content in its place. It just sticks it all the way to the right and floats all the other content around it. If you align it to the right,
Everything.
it breaks afterward, and all the content appears below it. Content left. So the left side, we're not going to float it because it's already aligned to the left by default, but we do want to set a width so that it's not busting in on the right column. So that's about 530.
And a line left is that's the container setter.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we do that anyway. We didn't have
Right, it's default to align left. So now if we refresh. Alright, so now we have our two columns of content. But in that right column, in the mockup, we're going to have some of these borders. So let's go here and add these borders underneath here. See how that looks. Alright, and now we've got a problem. So we want main content right. See, now it's floating, so I think that's part of why it's going underneath here. Let's see if this problem is replicated in IE. But IE, somehow, it works. Yep.
Wow. Well, but you know what, that actually that sort of makes sense sometimes, 'cause
Why is the container?
So that was the text, what the text is.
Yeah, why isn't the container container expanded?
In here?
Yeah.
That's a good question. We'll have to look at that. Oh, well, let's look at that now. In the style sheet, the container has min height 100, right? 100%. Alright, it looks valid. Let's make sure it is valid. It won't let me do it. Can I just paste CSS in somewhere to validate it? It's because it's local and not, yeah. Alright, well, let's see if we can figure this out on our own. Min height, 100% background, text only equals left. Just for...
Min height auto?
I don't believe so, but let's see. No. So, let's see. I'm going to try, I know this will break it in IE, but I want to see if that alignment was causing any problems. Nope. Wasn't that. So we'll keep that in the container. Let's just remove the min height for now. Let's see what happens. Let's add... Okay, I'm going to do something that I normally don't do. I'm going to take... I don't know, I don't want to take the float out. What I was thinking of doing is making this... taking this as not a float item, removing the float from the right column, because when you float something, it's now no longer a block element, so it will actually push content down correctly. See how it works correctly here, but when I float it, it only the height of its containing div, and I'll demonstrate it here. The height of its containing div is unaffected by the height of that. So maybe we can float it or set it. What's the magic one? Display inline block. Like this. Let's see if this is the magic bullet. No. The float is still. Oh no, I did.
No, because that actually makes it block element, but it doesn't inline, so it keeps it from ranking.
I did that only on my app.
You can do it on other things.
So now my sneaky Pete way to do this is to set it as a div with the margin of this much, like between here and here.
Oh.
But I don't know that
So
will...
you're sticking the float all together?
Maybe. I don't know that it will work, but a lot of what I do is just I poke and hope. So let's see, that margin's about 600 pixels. So if I set the margin left to 600, will that other content float up underneath it? No, it will not. So it positions it correctly, so we do need the float in there. Let's see. Alright. Here now is where I will do some very bad things. Tables
Fallback position.
will always push content. They'll always expand the height of an element no matter what. So the problem here is that this blue border is the main content area, but since this right here, this right column is floated, the parent container doesn't take that into consideration. But if we put this in a table, the table will automatically the table will automatically push the content to the appropriate height, even if there's items inside the table that are floated.
Okay, yeah.
So, so right underneath the encompassing the main content right and main content left, I'll put a table, and I want to set the style to be borderless.
Could you explicitly use the table to
I'm using the table to push the height out because floated elements don't like the height. And then border and then width 100%. Did I say that? Yeah, I did. Table class equals borderless. Class equals borderless. And there we go. So that's my dirty.
So it's one big square table with two divs.
Yep, one big table cell actually.
So one big cell.
One big cell.
So you're just using that to stretch everything out so that the divs can float where they need to. And
Correct.
that's so bad,
Except in IE where that table pushes it out. The borderless table pushes it out. So, but we can fix that because everything else that's the full width, we just add it to this. And then remove the width specification from here. And that did not help. Oh, because IE adds the padding to the width. So, let's do our, oh, didn't want to do that. A conditional IE. So we'll add a new file here. Call it IE style. Well, actually, let's go back to 7 and see if that if the same issue occurs in IE 7. Yes, it does. So we can set it for IE's styles. So, how do we fix this? No, we just hard code the width. So the padding, the width is 921. The padding is 10 pixels on each side. So the width of this will be 901 pixels. And then in our index.html file, we do a conditional statement. Saying if, what is it? IE, if IE, I think. Is that it?
He said like 3 words.
Right, yeah, if IE and then
Okay. And then end if. Okay.
you can just put IE for all.
Right. So and then
Caps,
did not fix it. The container itself is.
Does the IE have to be capitalized in the if IE?
In the conditional statement? Possibly. Okay. let's do this. To see if it's picking up this correct IE style. Yes. And I don't see a red border.
Is the syntax right there? Maybe put, just to be explicit, put IE6 just to make sure.
I think this might do it. I had some space in there. No space there. Alright. Try again.
There
Okay.
you go.
Well, it did look like it shrunk a little bit.
Yeah. Let's double check. Oh, no. I need that. Let's double check the container padding. Maybe it was wider than we thought. Main content padding is 20 pixels. So we need to take 40, so it's 881. Come on. Closer, better, closer, warmer. Make sure this isn't breaking. See now what's up with that.
Wow, that's kind of edgy. Well, no, did you change padding in the regular set as well?
Let's try dropping this to 878. Nope. Yeah, that's it. Alright. So I fixed it there. So fix it here. Yes. Terrific. So it's not the ideal way to do heights, but if you want to,
If you want to be that backward compatible.
yeah. And then the good thing about floating content to the right is, as I was mentioning to James before, is that you can, like the content will flow underneath it once the length of the content next to it is reached, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay. So now if we look at this, see now I thought this was going to go, oh no, I set the width, that's why.
Yeah. It's hard
So
to-
now if I go,
I wouldn't want it to go over there.
but in order to demonstrate what floating does, see now how this content goes, wraps underneath. But for this example, we don't want that.
If I had a page or something like that where I wanted to float a poll in that content block, that would be a perfect solution.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they almost look like full
And then if you, I mean, we're not for this site, but if we float it to the left, there it is. And notice like the whole width.
That one's not floated left, so the one that is floated left
Yes, this is
explicitly goes further over.
exactly.
And the padding's attached to the float.
Yes, the actually this is margining. This, so the edge of the div is right here, and this is all margin. If we added padding, the edge would stay here, but the content will get pushed in that way. But we want this to be right.
The
And
border is outside, padding's inside.
correct. Border, no, margin is outside, padding is inside, border is the divider in between.
Okay.
Alright, so let's take out the borders, the test borders. Fix it up. So, structurally, we're where we want to be. Check it in all these browsers. Let's get rid of the tableless.
Is this gonna end up being the style sheet and the HTML for pipeline?
No.
I thought that.
Hello.
That's an IE.
Yeah, this is IE7. So structurally we are set. Let's do the 3-column footer, because that's another bit of structural goodness. Oops, did not want to do that. Okay. So if we go down here, we've got three columns and then this 4th column here. So,
That's
how,
like a list.
yeah. So what I'll do is I'll just make divs for each of these and float them left and see how that works. And give them some padding or some margins. So, in our style sheet, we'll say
So they're all
that,
contained in the footer.
yeah, we'll say any div that exists inside a footer. So, something that has an ID with a div in it. We'll say float left and margin left 20 pixels. And we'll add our divs to the footer. Nah, let's do this. Alright, so let's see how that looks. Alright, it didn't give them margins like we thought it would, because I didn't specify that right.
We didn't close that out either, did we?
No, I had a semicolon instead.
Oh, it looked like you were missing your bracket.
No, it's fine.
No, yeah, it's down there.
Oh, no,
Okay. So let's actually see how much those margins are. So from the left, that's 30 pixels. That's 60 pixels. That's,
So it could be 30 left and right.
yeah, so this needs about 30, this footer needs padding about 30 left and right, and then we'll set the margins for the divs. So the footer padding, so I'll do, how much padding do we need from the top?
What if you just put 30 padding on each of those divs, left and right? Wouldn't that, then you're gonna have 30 on the left, 60 in between each one.
I'm not. I'm sorry. I was thinking about something else. 10 pants, 30 pants. Alright, let's see how that looks. Alright, so we have. Let's measure it.
Yeah, I mean, if you put 30 pixels padding
On
on
the
the
actual
left
div
and right of each div element, then you're gonna end up with the correct spacing between all of them. It was 60 in the middle columns, and it was 30 on this edge.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, we could do that. Oh, and notice the div itself just expanded because we added padding, so that's a good idea. So what were you saying? Add 30.
Left and right. Yeah.
Okay. But let's add padding to the top too.
Yeah, sure.
That's cool.
That is much better. But now we remember this one
That's the one we want.
is actually way over here.
Oh, that's the
Yeah, You can make that one a
separate
class,
class,
yeah.
float it.
Yeah.
Or separate, that could be an ID.
We'll make this one a separate class and well, float it. We'll float it right with the same width as that one column so that it lines up. See what happens. Let's see. Well, we don't want to change any of that, so let's do it inline. Okay, so div style equals float, right?
So when you're doing your heading, is there a specific order for top right?
Yeah, it starts at the top and goes counterclockwise.
Counterclockwise?
Yeah, so top,
Clockwise.
clockwise, I'm sorry. Top, right, bottom, left. Okay, where was I? So I came here and we'll set the float and that and see how this goes. There we go. And as always, oh, what's changed? Oh, no, that was just the header loading.
What happened with IE6?
Nothing, actually. It
Oh.
worked correctly. And IE7. Come on, IE7. And it worked there, too. So now all that's left is to do the fonts and the border spacing. Oh, whew, excuse me. So, but that's how. What methodologies and tools I use to build a site out using CSS, and I start just by doing the gross hugeness of it all, and then work toward just having to do the fonts last. I use temporary borders liberally to figure where content is going to go and where things are floating and what heights are, and tables when floats just won't cut it. So, any questions?
No, that was really,
I
pretty
actually have
good.
a couple things that I've already taken and put into here that have fixed some nagging issues, so.
From basic and to advanced, where does this fall?
Is kind of in the middle. Like you can do that right positioning with and make the height. You can deal with the height issues without tables, but for me it's just quicker to use a table, one table to set the height of something that is troublesome, rather than try to track down the reason in CSS and make it browser compatible. But my mantra is, measure, cut, and then check in browsers all the time.